Hi everyone, Steven here. If you want to learn about the distributed firewall with NSX Federation, stick around, that's what we're going to talk about. See you in a bit. Thanks for sticking around. So what we're going to take a look at in this episode is the distributed firewall when it comes to NSX Federation. So we'll talk about, for the most part, it's pretty straightforward, but there are some things you got to be aware of, right? And I'll give you an example of that. So why don't we get started? But before I jump into that, hey, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel if this is content that you're interested in. Without subscribers, there's no content developers. Also, if you find this entertaining a bit, hit that thumbs up. I'd appreciate it. Also, what's new is super thanks. If you want to support the channel, you can hit on the super thanks if you like. That's optional if you want to. So let's jump into this. Let's get into here. So what I've got here, I'm connected to my global manager. Again, if you haven't seen my series on the on Federation, me setting up, you want to watch all those. I'll leave links at the end for that. But I've got my environment set up just really quickly under networking. You'll see I got a tier 0 gateway here. It is stretched. I have 2 sites, okay? And I've got a tier 1 gateway. It's DR only, right? Oh, sorry. Actually, you know, that was from my last one. It doesn't really matter for this demo anyways. So I got a tier 1 gateway that's stretched as well. And I actually have some segments that I've got stretched. I have a stretched web, I have a stretched database, and I have a stretched app. So I actually have 3 segments hooked to that tier 1 gateway that's stretched. And so it's web, app, and database. On my web, I actually have two VMs there, web 1 and web 2. Database, I have 1 VM, web database, and then app, I have an app VM. I have north-south going on, so if I actually just open up a command prompt from my desktop here, if I ping my web servers, 172.16.10.11, so that's coming out from my environment going into my virtual, so I'm able to hit my web 1, that's .11, web 2 is .12. If I go to app now, that's 20.11 subnet. That's app that I'm pinging. And then database is 30.11. Okay? Pretty straightforward, pretty simple type of thing. If I go into my global manager here, if I go into location managers, you'll see I have site A and site B. I only have 2 sites. Okay? It's pretty straightforward. Now, a couple of things what we want to do here is create some rules and some groups, right? So I'm in Global Manager, and if I look under Global Manager, if I go into Inventory, if I click on Groups, you'll see that there is no groups here, okay? These would be global, these are groups from the Global Manager. So let's go in and add a group, right? So I'm going to click on Add Group, and I'll call this, Web Global, right? Actually, no, let's just call it web servers, okay? Web servers. Now, notice over here under region, it's saying, what do you want? Do you want this group to be for site A? Do you want it to be for site B? Or do you want it to be global? Okay, so let's stop for a second. Let me cancel that. Let's explain a few things. Let's go about my iPad here. All right, so I've only got 2 sites. I have a site A and a site B. I have my web segment stretched across. I also have a database segment, and I also have an app segment being stretched across, okay? I only got 2 sites here. Now, there's a concept in Federation, which I've talked about in the very beginning what Federation is. You can have a local sites, global sites, or regional sites. I only got 2 sites here, okay? So, for example, I've got, in this picture here, I've got 3 locations A, B, and C. A global group would basically be a group that's encompassing all those locations A, B, and C, which makes sense. Then you have a local group. A local group would just be the individual locations, location A, location B, or location C. Again, makes perfect sense. Now, what's a region? A region is multiple locations. So, for example, I could create a region for location A and B. This would be region 1, region 1. I could do something like that. I could make another region, let's say, for locations C and B, region 2. So you have that flexibility. An example of that would be, again, I'm Canadian, so maybe I have 4 locations. I have Toronto, Montreal, New York and Washington, D.C., right? So I could create a global group that comprises all 4 of those locations. Makes sense. It's a global group that goes across all 4. Or I could do regions. I can say, okay, Toronto and Montreal, I'll put that in the Canada region. New York and Washington, I'll put that in the United States or USA region. Okay, so I can create groups based on regions only, and therefore have firewall rules based just on regions. Okay, I can't demo that. I only got 2 sites. Okay, I got limited resources. If I had a 3rd site, I could demo it. So I wanted to point that out. I'll come back to this picture in a minute, right? So let's go into let's go back into here. So I'm going to go back to add group here. I'll call this web-servers. And then again, by default, each site is a region on its own, technically, okay? So site A is its own region, site B is its own region, and then globally comprises of both. So I'm going to say this is going to be a global group, and I'll say select members. Now, just like your distributed firewall, if you haven't watched it before, watch that video, it's pretty straightforward. I can create static groups. You pick and choose what you want in there, or I can do dynamic groups based on a certain criteria. So I'll go add criteria. I can say the virtual machine or the NSX segment or the port or whatever. I'll say virtual machine. Notice I could pick tags or name or the operating system name or computer name. I'm going to say in my example here, I'm going to say the virtual machine name can contain or start with or equal or whatever. I'm going to say it contains the value web. And then I'll say apply. And I'll say save. So I just created a group, a global group. Notice the region here says global for web servers. Let's add some more groups here. Let's add in app-servers. Let's make that global, set members. I'm going to go criteria, virtual machine. I'll say name contains app. I'll apply that. I'll save that. And let's do one more, add group, database-servers. And we'll make that a global group, set members. Here's my criteria. Virtual machine name, say contains DB in it. And I'll apply that. And I'll save it. I could use tags if I wanted to, but I'm not, just for this quick demo. So now if when I go into security, let's go into security. Actually, let's go back to inventory first, right? Let's go back to inventory. Let's go back into groups. Let's look at my app server, say view members, and you'll see over here under site A, it has app 1. Under site B, there shouldn't be anything. I only got the 1 VM. Okay, I'll close that. Let's look at web servers, view members. Under site A, there's web 1. If I click on site B, you'll see there's web 2. So I got my web servers on 2 different sites. Great. And my database, well, it's going to be on one of the sites there. So we'll leave that. Actually, let's look at it. Database, it's not under site A. Let's go to site B, and we see it's there. So it's automatically populated that, which is great. Let's close that down. All right. Let's create a firewall rule now. Okay. So let's go into security. And if you know how to do this under distributed firewall, just without federation, it's pretty much the same concept. So I'll say distributed firewall, and I'm going to say add a policy, and I'll say my policy here might be a block SSH, whatever. I'll give it a name that makes sense, right? And then I'm going to go in and add a rule in that policy. Remember, policy contains rules. So my new rule will be, block SSH to DB, something like that. And I'll say my source. Let's say in this example, come on. Now in this example here, you see again, I'm using my source here. It comes up with my groups that I created, my web servers. So I'll say web servers to source, and then what's my destination? I'll say database servers, and then I'll say services. Again, over here, I'm just gonna do a search for SSH, hit enter, and I'm selecting the SSH service. Contacts is your layer 7. So I could, again, this one here just looks for, again, port 22, TCP. This one is actually looking at the app ID for, let's say, SSH. I don't care about that. I'm gonna leave. Now, the apply to field, this is something you really want to think about, folks. I talked about this. I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole on this one. Watch my distributed firewall video. You want to be very specific here. If I leave this at distributed firewall, which is the default, every VM in Federation gets all these rules. So that doesn't sound like a good idea, especially if this rule is just for web and database. So I'm going to be specific. I'm only going to say I don't want to apply it to distributed firewall, meaning everybody. I just wanted to apply it to the database group and the web server group, and I'll apply that. Okay. So this gives you the ability to be specific on what machines the rules apply to, which you want to be, okay? Now, if this rule applied to everything, then that's a different story. I'd probably leave it, okay? Say action, do I want to drop it or reject it? I'm going to basically say reject. This way it spits back an error so I can do my demo. And at that point, if I hit publish, this will happen, right? But before we do that, let's do a quick test. Let me putty into my web servers. Let me go to, do I have web listed on here? No, I don't. Amazing. Okay, let's go to 172.16.10.11. That's web 1. And let's log in as root. Let's change the font so it's a little bigger. Appearance, change. Okay. Let's change the colors too. You folks watching me do this, I always like to change the background color just to keep it interesting. Okay. Apply. There we go. So right now I'm on web 1, right? Let me show you the IP there, 172.16.10.11, right? So I'm on web 1. I'm going to SSH into my database. SSH into 172.16.30.11. That's my database. It's going to let me go in. All right, they're all on database right now, right? So let's exit that. I haven't published this rule. Let's publish the rule. Publish. Boom, boom. It's successful now, right? Let's just refresh, make sure everything's okay. It's successful. Let's try this now. Boom, it says connection refused. It says refused because I said reject, okay? So that's kind of cool. So it doesn't really matter where I have my VMs right now. I'm on web 1 and web 1's on site A. Database, where's database? On site B or whatever it could be. It doesn't, I don't really care what sites it's on. So if I move my VMs around, those rules are going to follow the VMs, which is rather cool. So if something happened to site A and I bring it over on my web 1 to site B, those rules still apply. Now, there's something you have to be very cautious about, all right? So this seemed pretty straightforward and pretty simple. Let's look at a situation that we could run into trouble. Let me go back to my iPad here. So on my iPad, so I only had 2 sites. It's pretty straightforward. In my example here, I got 3 sites, okay? And I can create different objects, global objects, local objects, or regional objects. So in this picture here, I've got a tier 0 stretched gateway. That's a global object. It's going across all 3 sites. Makes sense. Connected to that tier 0 is this tier 1. Notice it's a local object. It's not stretched, and that's valid. That's okay. So that means that this segment here is only on site A and that's it, or location A. Notice in this picture, there's a tier 1 gateway that's stretched across locations B and C. So that would be a regional object with the regional segment. Then down over here, let's change my colors. Down over here, it looks like I created again another regional object just going across 2 sites, which is fine, and the segment that just spans the 2 sites. Now, and down at the bottom, I got a tier 1. That's a global object that's going across all 3 sites. And again, you'll see there's a stretch segment. So what's the potential issue that you could run into here? Let's say you've got this segment that's spanning all the sites. It's a global object. Then you decided to create a firewall rule, a group that only applies to location A. So that could be problematic, okay? That means if a VM moves from this location to this location, those firewall rules won't take effect anymore. Let's do an example of that right now. Let's screen cam. Okay, so let's go back into here. Let's go back into inventory. Let's create a group. Okay, I'll add group, and I'll call this, whatever, app2 group. Okay, whatever. All right. Now, under region, first of all, let's see where app is. App is on site A data center, app 1. Okay. That's where it is. All right, let's go back to NSX. So I'm going to say I'm going to create a group that's only applicable to site A, okay, to site A. So there we go. I'll set that, and I'll say set members. Let me add the criteria, virtual machine name contains app. I'll apply it. I'll save it. So there's my app 2. Notice again, under region, it's site A only. If I view members, I should just, there we go. There's app, right? Let me do a quick test. Let's kill this. So let's putty, let's SSH into app 172.16.20.11. So I'm going to SSH into there. We open that up and accept the certificate, and then root VMware one bang. So you can see I can, from the outside world, I can SSH into app. Let's create a firewall rule that won't allow me to do that. Okay, so let's go back to security. Let's go distributed firewall rule. I could create another policy or whatever. I'm just going to add the rule, add a rule in that same policy, right? And I'll call this rule block SSH to app. In this example, under source, I'm going to say any source. Destination, I'll pick the, destination, I'll pick the app2 group. I'll say apply. And then service here, let's go into filter SSH. Let's pick that, apply, and then let's follow good practice. Let me just make it specific to that app group, app2 group, apply, and then let's say reject, so this way it spits back an error. So I already showed you it worked before, so hits publish. There we go, let's try it now. 172.16.20.11. Network connection refused, okay? So we see that the outside world now, I can't SSH into app, okay? Now, because my segment, my app segment is a global segment, so app VM is running on site A. But that segment, that app segment, actually spans site A and site B. So that's what I just did there is considered really bad practice, right? So let's go into app here and let's migrate it to site B. So I'll right click on this. I'm going to say migrate. This might take a few minutes, but I'll probably just speed it up. So I'm going to do a cross vCenter vMotion, right? There's my site B. I already got it. So I'll go next. I'll put it on host 1 on site B. I'll put it on the local storage there, whatever. I go next, next. And then at that point, notice the network stretched app. Again, that exists at site B. So I'll go next, and I'll go next, and then finish. Now, we'll wait for that to finish, right? So it's queued. We'll come right back to that when it comes up. Okay, so we see that it's done that. Let's go to site B now. So I'm on site B. You see app 1 is over there, okay? Let's ping it first. Ping 172.16.20.11. Oh, I'm going to get an error there. Type that ping wrong. So I can ping app. Here's a true test. Let's see if we can putty into it. 172.16.20.11. Notice I'm able to putty into it. The firewall rule doesn't apply anymore to that VM. So this is something you got to really watch out for. Let's go back to the iPad, right? So back to the iPad here. Again, if you're creating security groups, right, and you're going to protect VMs on a segment, and that segment stretches all the sites, you want to make sure that security group is a global group and not like a region group or a local group. Because then if that VM has the potential to run on site B or site C, those rules won't apply if you don't have that group included in those sites. So watch out for that. That's it's considered really bad practice. So look at the scope of the segment and say, oh, this VM, like for example, app now, like let's go back in and fix this. Let's see if we can fix this. Let's go back into Global Manager. Let's go back into Inventory. Let's go back into Groups now. There's app 2. It's going to let me, let's see if it's going to let me change this. No, it won't let me change it. Okay. So because it's only applicable to site A, right? So you want to be able to make sure when you're creating your groups, right? So when you go in and create your groups, whatever the name of the group is, in the region, you have to ask yourself, okay, the VMs in this group, can they run on site A, B, C, D, whatever, right? And if so, you want to make sure you pick the global. Global combines all the sites. Or if you just have regions, which region it does, okay? So watch out. If it has the capability of running on a different site that's not in that group, you're opening yourself up to a potential attack in case that VM has to run on that other site. That's pretty much it. Pretty much everything else, if you watch my distributed firewall video. Everything else is the same. You can examine the filters on the VM. All that stuff is the same. It's really not that big of a stretch. I could have used tags if I wanted to, but I'm just being lazy, to be honest with you, in this example. But that's basically it for security with NSX Federation. Again, like I said, watch out for the span of the group, okay? And I kind of demoed this. So again, if you like this, hey, hit that thumbs up. I'd really appreciate it. If you found this is stuff that you're interested in, hey, hit the subscribe button, because without subscribers, there's no content developer. And again, like I said, I introduced super thanks. If you want to do that, that's totally up to you. Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you in the next one. Have a great day.